So we are going to go ahead and get started. My name is Elizabeth Aloni. I'm with Schneps Media. Schneps Media is the largest media company, local media company in New York metro area. We have over 70 newspapers, magazines, websites, webinars, podcasts, and events throughout Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Manhattan, Westchester, Long Island, and Philadelphia. And today I'm really thrilled to bring to you socially inspired investing. Such a wonderful topic because as investors, we want to make money. And as caring individuals, we want to make a difference. And today we're going to learn about how we can do both. I'm excited to welcome our panel of experts who will share with us what it is socially inspired investing is, how to become a socially inspired investing. So let's get started with a wonderful video. And then I'm going to introduce you to our impressive panelists. So just give me a second and I will gear up that wonderful video.
I believe in science, and I believe that greenhouse gases contribute to climate change. So, when my kids ask me, what can we do to help prevent global warming? I can say I chose to put my money where my heart is, by investing in companies that share my values. I like having the choice to build wealth without conflicts of interest, and Seasons of Advice allows me to invest in a future I can be proud of. Call 855-MY-SEASONS.
I love that video. It touches me. And it is so true. So let me welcome our wonderful panelists. First up is Chris Conigliaro. Welcome, Chris. He is the President and Chief Investment Officer. Chris is a 1993 Hofstra University graduate and has been in the financial services industry for more than 27 years. After stints at Merrill Lynch and Oppenheimer, the Seaford, Long Island native joined Ameriprise Financial. In addition to co-authoring Financially Secure Forever, the Seasons of Advice solution, Chris continues leadership roles in both the wealth advisory and consulting practices. Chris currently serves as President and Chief Investment Officer for Seasons of Advice Wealth Management. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Pleasure to be here.
Wonderful to have you. Next, I'd like to introduce Laura Hayman. She is a senior partner and wealth advisor. Laura has been in the financial services business since 1983. She has a BA in philosophy from the University of Maryland, as well as an MA and PhD in English literature from New York University. She's built her career working with individuals and small institutions, assisting them in their wealth management issues and helping them achieve their individual financial goals. Laura believes that businesses that focus on sustainability will in the long run be rewarded with better business outcomes. She's devoted to such causes as animal rights, rescue, and the vegan lifestyle. This is part of her family DNA. Welcome, Laura.
Happy to be here, Elizabeth.
And last but not least, I'd love to introduce Preston Forman. He is a senior partner and wealth advisor. Preston, a University of Massachusetts at Amherst alumnus, has been a financial planner since 2002. Before that, he was a reporter with the Enterprise of Brockton, Massachusetts, and the Standard Times of New Bedford, Massachusetts. He was also an editor with the technology publication Computer Reseller News. He earned the rank of Eagle Scout as a youth. Since joining Seasons of Advice in 2006, he's pursued continuing education as a CFP and maintains membership in the Financial Planning Association. A native of Massachusetts, Preston has lived for the past 25 years in Forest Hills, Queens with his wife, Tammy, daughter, Madeline, and son, Sam. He enjoys hiking and cooking, and his children rave about his chicken tenders. Welcome, Preston. Oh, you're on mute. You just need to unmute yourself. Oh, you're still on mute. Let me try to help.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Welcome. I think the chicken fingers comment left you speechless. So I would love to ask our panelists, what is socially inspired investing and how does it differ from regular investing? Chris?
Yeah, Elizabeth, thank you for that question. So I think similar to if you see the video that everyone just saw, socially inspired investing is about investing with your personal values. What is important to you? So if you're going to give someone your money and you're going to invest your money, you want to make sure that they are doing things that are important for you. So it is including causes that are important for you and your family, and it's excluding things that maybe you don't want to be part of your investment portfolio. And it all stems from what we call ESG investing, which is environmental, social, and governance, right? So it's taking all piece of those core pieces, pulling from there and making sure that things that are important for you, that you're building a portfolio around there. And that's different than what we see many other investment managers do, where they may just put a cookie cutter portfolio together for you and you don't have any type of influence, decisions. Like one of the mottos that we have is your money, your choice, right? We want you to be able to make decisions on what should be included and excluded, and then deal with a professional on the overall management of it.
I have to agree with you, Chris. Socially inspired investing has certainly hit a chord with my clients. I have a client who said to me when I broached the subject to him that he composts, I take out my recycling, and here I'm putting my money where it's important. It's an investment philosophy that aligns with my values.
That's very important. And there is a quote behind your head. I feel that we need to tell everyone. It says, "To be who you are and become what you are capable of is the only goal worth living." That's a quote from Alvin Ailey, and I think it's so appropriate to what you're talking about, for sure. So how does it help to include socially inspired investing in your portfolio? Does it create value, and why? Laura?
Well, first of all, on behalf of Preston, Chris, and myself, we want to thank you, Elizabeth, for hosting this. This is a very important subject, and a lot of people are interested. Now, from a diversification perspective, socially inspired investing would tend to have a low correlation in general with traditional or conventional assets, low crossover. So what that means is it would help round out the asset allocation in your portfolio, and it would help lower your overall risk. The other thing is, as far as value is concerned, this is created as these tend to be both public companies and bonds that are more forward-looking, more futuristic, more modern, if you will. And the companies themselves would tend to be able to attract more enthusiastic employee talent, help motivate customers, as well as be companies with a well-defined long-term strategic purpose. All of these things helpful to your bottom line. And so we feel this movement is inevitable.
Those are all really good points. Preston, did you want to share a little bit about that too?
Yes, Elizabeth, we've all dealt with the pandemic for the past year, and certainly it's changed the mindset of investors, but it's also changed the mindset of corporations. One of the things that we noticed very soon in the first months of the pandemic is that environmental, social, and governance funds, they demonstrated greater resilience early in the pandemic. That's important. The diversification helped really allow these portfolios to really perform well.
We all care, but we also want to make money. And what you're talking about here is the reason why there's great performance, like you said, forward-thinking companies and companies that are able to sustain. So, can investing this way long-term, can it actually increase your return? Or do you have to kind of settle for, I just feel really good because my money's in a good place?
You do not have, point blank, you do not have to sacrifice returns to be socially inspired or socially responsible. The good news is that you can do well while doing good. I hinted at it a moment ago. We're a different society than we once were. It's no longer enough just for a company to make a profit and perhaps show support of their local community. Consumers now are demanding that corporations be good corporate citizens and to use their economic power to change society. more to your point, or more to answer the question, last summer, Morningstar reported that 72% of sustainability equity funds ranked in the top half of their respected categories. And almost all 26 major ESG index funds outperformed their conventional indexes last year. That's very important.
Wow. That's not something you think about, because you think I'm going to do something good. You don't realize that in the good, there's a well-run company because of it.
Yes.
Chris, do you have more to add?
Yeah. And as Preston was pointing out, historically, when people have thought of socially inspired investing or socially conscious investing, you believe that you were limited in what you could actually invest in. And that's not how it is today. Part of what we see from our research, because we run many different models within the Seasons of Advice family. And actually, one of the things that we have is our stewardship personal values portfolios. So there's a whole process that we go through in actually analyzing different investments, whether they are individual companies or they are mutual funds, exchange traded funds. And what we found is the universe that is now available to us is tremendous. Nothing compared to in the past. And what that enables us to do is actually run our normal algorithms, I'll use a fancy word here, to kind of come up with, investments that will perform and will outperform. And what we see is that the money that companies are spending, that people are investing, is all going in the direction of socially inspired investing. And if you don't start to invest that way, what's going to happen a year, 5 years, 10 years from now, you're going to fall behind the curve and you're going to underperform. Because what happens is, and you just think about it, if someone does not manage their company to support the environment, things can happen where they can be fined if they do things that are not in alignment with a certain country. That can hurt performance. If they don't have a diverse board and they limit the pool of people that they want to actually employ, that's not getting the best people to run your company. That can hurt performance. So knowing those actually.
Can you talk a little bit more to that? Because it was really fascinating in talking with you all about how the makeup of a board makes a difference in the success of, I was blown away by that. If you would share more about that, because I really think it's something that a typical investor, you don't think about, let me look at who's on the board and how that impacts the company.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just you can think about anything, if you limit if you limit and exclude some of the best people that are out there, some of the smartest, some of the brightest, because historically you limited the type of person that you wanted on your board, well, that doesn't necessarily allow the company to make the best decisions. So some of the things that we found in just our research in building our portfolios is actually having more women on a board actually supports that company where they've actually performed better. So, it's just, we're just moving forward where we're in a world where it's inclusive, everyone is involved, and the more that we can pull from the best of the best, that will support a socially inspired portfolio, and it will support a company and how they perform going forward.
If I can just add to that for a moment, everywhere we see that Americans want the picture of America represented in all aspects of their lives, in legislators, and obviously in companies as well. And that also has an effect on board members, because you don't get monolithic thinking. The idea is that you have the more creative thinking, because more different types of individuals with different past experiences, all of which affect the way you behave and you think.
I love thinking about it like that it's not just a want, that I want to see it look that way, but that it's financially sound or more sound that way. And I think that's what I keep going back, and I've been amazed at what you all do, is that it's for the benefit of the investor from a financial perspective as well. It's not just feel good. It's
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, and I think what, a client, I mean, they want to do good, right? They want to help and support the environment. They want to support society, but they also want, in a lot of cases, need to make money, right? You need your portfolio to perform for you. You can't just, invest and just hope for the best at that point in time. So you need your money to work for you. And what you'll see is, as Preston said, you can perform well by doing good. And, that's what we see.
The bottom line is that this is how our economy is going to look in the future, and our country. It's important to embrace this.
That's great. Now, often you talk about including and excluding when you're working with making choices for an investor. What are some of the filters or causes that can be either eliminated or included when you're creating a socially inspired portfolio for a client?
Yeah, Elizabeth, I think that's great. I think for some people, it is definitely a challenge to know, what can I do? What should I do? It's important to me, but can I invest this way? So I think there's a slide we can bring up where we can actually kind of list a few of these. So I think everybody, hopefully you can see on the screen now, we have, I think the important thing to take from causes is there are causes that can be inclusive and exclusive, right? So it's not just remove tobacco from my portfolio, but it's also, as I mentioned before, I want to invest in women leaders. So when thinking about different causes, you can see here, it could be including to invest in racial justice. It could be making sure that I want to support LGBTQI rights. I want to support women leaders. Or, as I mentioned before, I want to exclude controversial weapons. I want to make sure that I don't invest in pipelines. I want to make sure that we divest from big tobacco, or I don't support deforestation. So all those things are important in deciding, what are causes that can be included or excluded, what's important to me. And I think that's where it all comes out, right? It's your personal values. What is important to me, and how is that reflected in the portfolio that I have, and that will ultimately support me making more money and doing the right thing.
And I would also add to that Seasons of Advice tries very hard not just to filter out the kinds of things one would expect should not be included in an ESG portfolio, but we also very much want to tailor make these portfolios to each individual. And if you have a specific cause and you are interested in something, always share it with us, because if there's a way to invest either on the bond side or the equity side, we will be looking for those to add to your portfolio. This is very different from 3 decades ago. I mean, this is light years ahead of what you were given as a choice, where one money manager, for instance, ran a fund of socially inspired investments, and you fit yourself into that mold. This is all at SOA, whether it's ESG investments or even our traditional models, it's all about you. So we start from the client and build from there.
Right, and just to support that, I mean, we actually have specific technology that we take advantage of to help us to drill down. So, it's not just listening to the news or reading an article or seeing somebody doing good, say, oh, that's a company to be involved in, to include in our portfolio. We actually have specific types of research technology that we can enter in certain data, have that drill down, and actually give us scoring on companies or on mutual funds or on ETFs to help guide us in what would be considered a socially responsible investment and what would not be. What which companies actually are excluding things and which are including things. And then ultimately that allows us to decide what should be included or not included within our portfolios.
So it's a real process. This is not, where you sit down with each individual, discuss, what is important to them, both from including and excluding certain things, but then you do the research and you have the tools to allow you to make sure that you're investing in a way that is smart and beneficial, obviously, to one's portfolio.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a combination of us working directly with the client, getting an understanding of what's important to them, their values, what they want to include, what they want to exclude. But then it's then us going and taking our technology and the research that we do to help to identify the specific investments that then make sense. We actually have, we have an investment committee that meets on an ongoing basis where we take all our data, all our research, all this information, and we drill down and we actually have a debate on what should be included and excluded in portfolio when it comes to specific investments, right? So we can kind of get a sampling, we can get the pool of investments within different categories and then decide, okay, what do we believe now is the best? What fits the values we're looking to support, but what will also perform on an ongoing basis. And then we kind of work that through on each month and then drill down and then deliver it to our clients.
This is the definition of active management, and that's what we do.
Very exciting. And it's both exciting from a seasoned investor who, watches the market or is involved from that perspective to, someone like myself who's not so seasoned at investing, but that this perspective gets me excited about it. Because so it's really, I see that, what you're doing from both the cause perspective and from the research and drilling down and the professional debates that go on, that it really is for both types of investors and creates an excitement for that. I would love to share another video that kind of speaks to the choices you can make. So I'm going to share that with you now.
I was taught to treat everyone with respect, and oftentimes, me being true to myself meant difficult decisions, not adhering to social norms or even agreeing with my family, friends, or coworkers. So when it came to investing, there's something empowering about putting my money where my heart is, in companies that share my values. I like having the choice to build wealth without conflicts of interest, and Seasons of Advice allows me to invest in a future I can be proud of. Call 855 My Seasons.
That says a lot right there. So my next question is, socially inspired investing has become very popular these days. How do I know it's not just a fad? Why do you think it is so popular?
Well, I would frame the answer this way, Elizabeth. Socially inspired investing is both timely, but also timeless. Because being more forward thinking with your investment choices isn't a fad. In fact, it's the antithesis of a fad. It spans the ages. Now, since 2014, we know that there's been a tenfold increase in the amount of money invested in the ESG space. And the voting my dollar trend only continues to grow. So the genie is out of this bottle and there's no putting it back. This is reinforced, by the way, by companies, both from the top down because of the investor class requiring it, and from the bottom up with the consumers requiring that. Conscience plays a part. So there's no way, I believe, that we can consider this a fad. It's fashionable, but it's forward thinking and here to stay.
Preston?
I'd like to follow up on that. When I started my career 20 years ago, socially responsible investing existed in an embryonic form. It was very difficult to craft a portfolio without compromising returns, your values, or both. That's not the case anymore. As Laura mentioned, not only are companies embracing this philosophy, but they're finding it profitable. This is, again, this is where our economy is going. I noticed this morning, I don't know if I can show it well on the screen, but Biden's big infrastructure push puts climate fight at the forefront. It's everything we're talking about. This is where we're going.
So if it's on the front page of the newspaper, you know that it's going to be affecting the bottom line of companies and those that are involved with it as well.
Indeed.
So
Yeah, and just a point, and I think this is an opportunity for you, the client out there, to take advantage of this, right? But do it in a way in which you have control, right? It's your decision, your choice. You guide how you actually want the portfolios to be created so that it supports what's important to you.
That's exciting because also, I feel, with your money, you want to feel some sense of control. Often when you go to a financial advisor, you kind of feel like you're just going like this, and hoping that things turn out well, and you really don't understand where that's coming from. And I think, understanding these companies, I think, is empowering because it makes you feel like you have power over your investment. It's not just kind of a hope and a dream. And that to me is very exciting. I've heard of this term green bonds. What are they?
Good question. Right. It's not just the color green, right?
I wasn't sure. Well, green's money. It could be a bad thing.
Exactly. So basically, I'll take this. A green bond, it's similar to a conventional bond. So where someone is, you're loaning money so that you get a dividend on an ongoing basis. The difference is a green bond has a specific purpose, right? They are used to help create and fund projects, right, that have environmental and climate benefits. So instead of a company just needing money because they're gonna build a new facility or something, this is specific that ultimately helps the environment and climate. So I'll give a couple of examples. So one is Apple. So Apple issued green bonds and actually is in the process of new issues with green bonds. And what they have is they are looking to raise $4.7 billion in order to help create 1.2 gigawatts of clean energy, right? So they're investing money, and the bonds are the way in which they are trying to raise money to do it, where they can support clean energy. And that could be for their company alone, where they have a data facility that they're looking to create, and that's supported and run through clean energy, or they're going to look to funnel money towards the grid, our energy grid, in a clean format. Another example is the Ford Foundation. So the Ford Foundation is a huge $12 billion foundation that's out there to help support many causes. But one of the projects they have is actually their social bond framework, where it's the creation of green bonds. That it's an initiative to support nonprofit organizations, and specifically ones that have been affected by COVID. So obviously, many of us have been affected in many different ways, many small businesses, many companies, but nonprofits, a lot of them have been devastated. A lot of them, they need funding. They need to raise money to support what they do. The Ford Foundation has created this social bond framework in order to support them. And that is done through the issuance of green bonds. So that kind of gives you a little perspective on what they are.
So really the green bonds are socially inspired bonds. Is that correct? Pretty much?
Exactly. A company is inspired to do good. And the money that they're raising is to help infrastructure in a clean way, or it's to help organizations that support a social platform. So these are all, but it's important for you to know, what exactly they're investing in to make sure that that supports your values, because a green bond can be created to generate and to build funds for anything. And how people invest in them is interesting too, right? So you can actually go out and purchase an individual green bond. Like you can try to go to your investment advisor, or you can go online if you have your own online and search for Apple green bonds. I mean, you have to get a little deeper to find it, but you can actually search and try to find a specific green bond. Or what we recommend probably for more investors, and especially if you're new to this, is you can find a fund or an exchange traded fund that the sole purpose is to invest in green bonds. And a lot of times these types of funds are called impact bond funds because they're impactful, right? They're trying to help something, and they will buy different green bonds. So that's different ways you as the consumer can go out and look to see, how do I include these within my portfolio?
Very interesting. Preston, did you want to say something?
Yes, on Chris's point, we're seeing most green bonds nowadays issued by governments and non-government organizations for sustainability and resilience projects, mainly for solar and wind power, particularly in the developing world, so that they have electricity, but they also have electricity so they can make clean water. But it's more than that. Chris was mentioning about impact-focused bonds as opposed to traditional bonds. One of the things we're finding, or governments are finding, is that it actually may even lower their borrowing costs. My favorite example of this is the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, what we call the T. They recently issued green bonds to build a seawall. And they needed the seawall to protect a bus facility. And while they were at it, they bought 150 electric buses, and they retired all their diesel vehicles. That is a great example of being able to do good and still make money at the same time. It was really a great project.
Wow, this is all blowing my mind. I didn't realize there was so much out there and so many opportunities like this. So how does someone go about finding companies or investments that you can invest in that are socially inspired?
Let me take that. Chris was mentioning earlier our investment meeting. It's one of the meetings you always need to make sure you have enough coffee when you enter, because it's a long meeting. We first start by taking a very deep approach that filters out some of the most common environmental and social concerns. You listed some of them: tobacco, palm oil, coal, weapons. We use two of the leading analyst firms in this field, Sustainalytics and MSCI. So little note here: you can go to the MSCI website and type in any company and get a ranking of how ESG friendly this company is. From there, we're looking for investments that will add alpha, that will add excess returns, and then we blend them all together to build a well-crafted asset allocation. That's really our structure and how we do it. And it's labor intensive, but it's really a lot of fun, at least if you're in this field.
I'm glad that you find it fun. I think I want to be a fly on the wall while you're debating the companies. That sounds fascinating to me.
Yeah, and just to pick up on kind of the major research firms that Preston mentioned. So there's actually many even more that have been coming out. I think as each month goes by, we get introduced to a new company that has kind of their own proprietary research around ESG investing and socially inspired investing. And there'll be more and more to come, because if you just do a Google search, right, and you're trying to find socially inspired investing or ESG companies, if you do that, you'll have tons of companies or investments actually pop up for you to be able to look at. But MSCI is probably the largest one that's out there. And they have a really good consumer facing aspect to what they do. A lot of these are other ones there. You may have to pay a subscription or things to get information, but MSCI, at least you can go in, put in a company, and it'll give you everything from what many of them do is they score different companies, right? So a score for one will say that this is actually a company that based on all of our content we build in is a socially inspired company, and some may not be. It also gets a little tricky, right? Because you can have an oil company, let's just say that historically, you would say is not an ESG company, but they may be starting to do investments in other areas for clean energy. And to some extent, an individual has to decide does that really fit their values? Maybe things that they're doing is important, but they're not fully there. So that's just one example. But there's many different ways, and I think as time goes on, the consumer will have so many different options on how to find research. Morningstar actually just bought Sustainalytics. So probably many people know Morningstar. You went in there, you searched, and historically they had a mutual fund, 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars. Well, now they are building out their whole socially inspired aspect of what they do. So if you subscribe to Morningstar, indirectly, you can get Sustainalytics research through them. They may have other ways in which you need to subscribe, but you can get a lot of data. And at least the scoring can be a start to kind of give you a foundation if something is something that you believe could be a good investment that supports your values or not.
And if I could just add something, I noticed while we were speaking that one of the questions that somebody is asking is exactly what you were talking to, an oil company that may be doing something more forward thinking. Is that considered ESG or not? Well, part of this is art, not science. And it's up to you to decide, is there enough of a move from a traditional fossil fuel company in a different direction that it should be part of your portfolio? We'll do the background in research, but you may say, one person may say, yes, they're forward thinking, they're making changes, this is where I want to be. One person may say they're not pure enough yet. So there is a degree of you're having to finesse whether this is a good investment, because there aren't, especially with companies that already exist, there aren't that many that are 100% pure in one direction or another. New companies, yes, all the time, new technologies. But if you look at some of the big companies that are making shifts in a direction, well, then it becomes more a question of the art of the way you feel about that company rather than the science.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. So, I just keep wanting to know more. I understand that you have a podcast called The Socially Inspired Investor and also a Socially Inspired Digest. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this is something that Seasons of Advice is extremely proud of. We just completed our first year, and we do once a month, we do a podcast and a digest. And basically, you can hear information about all kinds of things that you might not have even thought about from all kinds of experts that we bring together, talking about, for instance, smart cities. And I was interested to learn that when you think about smart cities, many people think about the technology that's the infrastructure of smart cities, but it's also what the people in the city commit themselves to do, because technology alone doesn't do it. And talking about bike paths that light up as bikers go by in Norway, all kinds of tidbits like this. The last podcast we did from this past year, if you're looking to find out what it's really like, is a summary of all the years, things that we've gleaned. So that would be a good place to start. And I will say they're both interesting, but also very user-friendly. So don't be afraid to join in. And I know Preston will have a lot more to say about this.
Yes, Preston.
Yes, it's a great place to start. I listen to it when, like most people, I am working from home right now. I run my practice from my son's bedroom. And when I am not there, I go on my walks, and this is one of the things I listen to is podcasts, including this one. I invite you. I think after our presentation, we're going to be sending an email with some links to it. One of the things you really want to go to is our socially inspired investor digest, where we collate all the information about this field. It's really very comprehensive, and there's also a link there to get to the podcast, and through your favorite podcast vendor, get it delivered every week or every month.
And you can also, just by going to our website, we have a lot of good information that's on there, but our website is soawealth.com. There's actually a link there to the Socially Inspired Investors Digest and podcast that you can sign on right there. I think the important thing is our goal is to be a thought leader in the industry and to provide information for you so that you can make your own decisions, right? So when you log into the podcast or read the digest, you're going to get good information. You don't get people selling a product or anything to that effect. It's really there to provide info so that it can help you craft your own portfolios when trying to build socially inspired investing within your allocation that you have.
I listened to one of the podcasts and it was really very interesting. One of the things I liked about it was that it made you think about products in a different way. I think one of them, they were talking about like solar powered garbage. And the different ways and the different elements of that. And it starts to really get your mind thinking about, okay, the company that has to create this is going to need to be revving up tremendously because of the efficiencies that are. So it was really very interesting and got my mind thinking in a whole different way. So, I can personally recommend it for sure, whether you're a seasoned investor or new to investing.
Yeah, thank you.
It's very exciting. It's an area that may be relatively new to a lot of people. For some people, they've lived with it most of their lives, but it's a very exciting area because there's so much optimism in what these companies are trying to achieve.
Fantastic. Thank you for all this information. I do want to save some time so we can get to some of the great questions we have from our attendees. So the first question I have is this for everyone? And how much do you need to invest this way?
I'll take that. You really can start off very small with exchange traded funds, some environmental ESG mutual funds. Interestingly, just yesterday, I was speaking with some clients who I had over time. We now have an ESG portfolio for both him and his wife. And he said to me, "Oh, my son is now graduating from college. I want him to do a Roth IRA." And he handed me the phone off to him. And one of the first things the 22-year-old said was, "I want to do right by the world. I want you to help me figure out what I can do with my very small investment." And that's kind of fun. I was very proud of him, particularly since I've seen him since he was just a little boy.
Yeah, and I think that's a good example where you could have someone who just wants to begin and maybe whatever funds that you have that you can get involved. It could be probably as simple as you buy a single stock and for a few dollars per share, or if you're going to build a more comprehensive portfolio, right? So if you're going to build an allocation model and have money going into different areas, at that point you're probably looking at then starting where you have $50,000 to $100,000 to start, right? Mm-hmm. But anyone can get involved at, I think, any level of investment. It's just more comprehensive as you move up and you need to include a greater variety of investments to diversify. That's when then you move up to where you're starting at $50,000 to $100,000, I would say.
Thank you for that. Another question we have, what makes your approach to ESG unique? So you were talking about ESG. So how does, I hate to use another SOA, ESG, but how is your approach?
Yeah, so I'll Laura,
Sure.
so the difference, the way that we look at it is, historically, people would just, an individual investor or a company would just take one specific investment, put it inside their portfolio and say, okay, you're now investing, socially inspired or environmentally friendly. What we do is we look at it as your entire allocation, the entire portfolio, every single investment class, whether it's your stocks, your bonds, other alternatives that may be in there, each one of them has to support your values. So part of going back to the research that we do is when we're analyzing investments, we're analyzing not just a specific investment, but the categories that they're in. So we can build a fully functional investment model for you that also supports your goals. Because it's, investing in a socially responsible manner is one thing, but most of the time you're also investing to support your future, right? Your retirement, your kids' education, you want to buy a home. So all that stuff has to blend together. So our planning and the way that we structure our portfolios, it's what makes us unique and differentiates us, I think, from others.
What I would add to that, what I would add to that is that, and this is, I think, somewhat unique to Seasons of Advice in period, as with even our traditional portfolios, on top of what Chris is describing, we also look at what your particular risk tolerance level is. So we can formulate a portfolio, all ESG, traditional, whatever it is, that runs from the most conservative investor all the way through to the most aggressive investor, and make sure that the level of investing matches the risk reward that that person is individually comfortable with. So it's all about the investment allocation. On top of that, the risk reward that you're willing, in other words, how much risk are you willing to take to get X reward? And that is a very important, unique way that we look at all our portfolios.
Great, thank you for that. Anne had a question, and not on mute. Anne had a question, and I think we addressed this a little bit, but she's bringing the question further, talking about her concern that she's skeptical about companies like Apple creating green bonds. Like, is it a genuine move from the company? Are they just riding the wave? Or she also mentions FedEx and DHL, now considering environmental investing when their plastic packaging doesn't have the recycle logo on it. So I think this kind of touches upon a little bit about what you spoke about earlier, about this kind of managing your own comfort level. But what do you have to say to Anne about those questions?
I would say that yes, she's right to be a little skeptical. We are, but at the same time, we're making a great move towards making it a more just society and a more environmentally friendly society. It takes time, and that's something we do have to acknowledge. However, we're seeing more and more companies. More and more governments are saying we need to move in this direction because it's not going to change between climate change and just doing right by the world. We do have to make these changes, and that's going to take some time, but this is where we start.
Yeah, and I think companies, they see the writing on the wall. It's the direction they have to go in, right? It's going to affect their performance, their earnings, their revenues going forward. So yes, it may start out as I'm going to do it just to say we do it, but I think companies like Apple and some of the other ones truly are making large investments. And yes, they need to make money, but they believe they also see it as the way they're going to make more money is by going in this direction. And then it does circle back to, you have to decide for yourself how pure it needs to be. Now, some companies will be very pure, and there's some that are building towards that. But I think
Well,
that's a good way of phrasing it.
oh, sorry, Chris. The other thing to bear in mind is, again, both the investor class and the consumer class are pushing for this. So you could ask yourself what's really in the heart and minds of the top CEO and CFO at Apple. But on one level, it's not really even that relevant, because the fact that they're doing something has a positive effect. Sometimes you do something first and the motivational change follows because you see it reinforced in being well received. So it's not that easy to get into the psychology of what a company is doing and why, but on some levels it doesn't matter that much. The fact that they're doing it itself is instructive.
I love what you said about reinforcement, maybe because I'm like thinking about mothering, but the positive reinforcement, right? So if you're investing in Apple's green bonds, regardless of what their intention is, you're putting your money where your mouth is, and you're saying, yes, I stand behind that. I'm going to give you positive reinforcement behind it. Therefore, it's successful for you. Therefore, you're going to continue. So there's also kind of that cycle that by putting your money behind these moves that these companies are making, no matter what their intention is behind it, you are causing change by giving positive reinforcement.
You're part of the movement, Elizabeth. That's exactly right. It's very empowering. You have control.
I love it. I love it. So Matthew wanted to know, can an investor choose a specific company or investment and exclude others? So we talked about categories. Can they delve into specific companies?
So yes. So we actually, one of the things that an individual can do, and there's companies out there that do, and we do this. So part of the process that we'll go through with the client is, there's a questionnaire where you actually look through what areas you want to be inclusive of and what you want to be exclusive of. And then we actually, through our technology, will actually help us filter down to uncover the companies that support the values that this individual wants. And then we can create a portfolio of individual companies that will support those values. So the quick answer, yes, it can be done. And that, for us, that is how we focus a lot of our investing on. There's more and more companies that are starting to do this also. Because again, for us, like I mentioned in the beginning, your money, your choice, right? So the only way we're going to be able to support that is by being able to help you have choice and kind of narrow things down. So the quick answer is yes.
Great. Now, Adrian is cutting to the chase here. Adrian wants to know, what have your returns on investment on average been for people over a 5-year period?
Wow.
She's not fooling around.
No, not at all.
I don't know if that's like,
yeah, it's a little difficult to say because since the portfolios are customized for each individual as we're narrowing down, what I would say is everything that we do is benchmarked against indexes or averages. And then what we are seeing is a steady outperformance of those indexes. So collectively, if we're taking an asset allocation model and we're hitting on all the different categories, we benchmark that model versus the comparable supporting indexes. And what we've seen over that time frame is that we have outperformance versus those indexes and that we're set up against.
And again, that's part of our active management structure, that we want to give added value. After all, if you just wanted to go out and buy an index fund, you'd buy an index fund. You wouldn't need actively managed investing. But we're constantly monitoring to see that our returns, and again, at all ends of the spectrum, from conservative through the most aggressive investment models, are meeting and exceeding the benchmarks that we're looking against. That's part of our modus operandi.
Great, terrific. So Jody wanted to know, what would you recommend is the next step for someone who's interested, and how can Seasons of Advice help someone who might be interested? What's the next step?
Yeah, so So one of the things is there's going to be follow-up that we're going to have from after this webinar, where there's more information, links, things that you can subscribe to. We are making available to everyone that's out there to have the ability to schedule a complimentary consultation with us. What we would look to then do is we would try to help you analyze your financial plan, your financial goals, and your portfolio and how it matches up truly to your values. So there's things that we can do just on an overview where we can have an X-ray of your portfolio, understand your values, and do a comparison where we can kind of say, all right, this is something that's important to you. However, 50% of your portfolio does not support that, right? So there are things like that that we are offering and making available to everybody who wants to take advantage of that, where we can help guide you and to help hopefully lead you in a way where you become a socially inspired investor.
Fantastic. And I did put your website in the chat. It's soawealth.com. And this has been recorded. We're going to share the recording with you so you can watch it again. You can share it with your community. We're also going to send you an email that's going to have their website and contact information there as well. As Chris mentioned, they're also going to send to you additional information so that you can get that, learn more about the free consultation, which is fantastic. Thank you for offering that to all of our attendees. I appreciate it. And this has been fantastic. Really, I've learned so much and I'm all jazzed up about it. Laura, Preston, Chris, thank you so much for being here and sharing with us and helping us understand socially inspired investing. I want to thank our attendees for joining us for some of your evening. I appreciate your being here and your thoughtful questions. And I wish you all to stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to seeing you on a future webinar.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank
Thank
you,
you very much.
Elizabeth.
Have a good evening.
Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.